Chapter 1. It had been a long time since I ran into a vampire, so I was looking forward to it. But it seems I was excited for nothing. You're not even stronger than an intermediate monster. The knight scoffed while holding onto the figure's hair. He desperately stretched out his hands towards the knight, but it was in vain. Eugene bathed in anger, despair, and regret in the pouring rain. He continued waving his amputated arms in the air to no avail. You killed quite a few, didn't you, you dirty beast? Kairouk. Kairouk. He could not even speak properly any longer, most of his blood having drained already. The only reason he could still hold on was due to the fact that he had sucked dozens of people's blood in the past 6 months, during his days of escape. If he had been caught on the first day of his escape, he would have been killed immediately. You can die proud, knowing that you bestowed the honorable title of Vampire Slayer to Lord Dircht. Do you want to know a secret? The Templar, the Holy Knight, the one who always cried out for noble faith, finally grinned while revealing his desires. The fact I joined the trackers after a few months, and the fact I've been letting you roam around. I did it on purpose. Since you are a relatively new vampire, it was better for me to hunt you down slowly to make the church and myself known. It also served as a warning for the unbelievers. Kung. This is where your role ends. God will not tolerate any more than this. Then burn in purgatory forever, monster. Crunch. The silver-plated long sword sliced through Eugene's neck. Crimson-red blood spilled from the cut and was greedily engulfed by the pouring rain. The evil, vicious vampire is dead. God has given us victory. We won. Woah! The voices of the mercenaries accompanying the Templar violently resonated in Eugene's head. Light was slowly fading from his eyes, and his vitality disappeared. Eugene's past days swept past his mind like a flash. If only he had not spent all that time in the mountains like a poor, helpless beast. If only he had learned and practiced earlier what he learned during the past half-year. If only he realized earlier that sucking blood was not just a simple act of fulfilling one's hunger. If only he had overcome his fears and somehow challenged stronger beings to win and devour their blood. If only. If only. If only. The last thoughts of life approached him like pouring rain and scattered into vain reminiscence. After realizing that he was not a regular human being, he had lived hidden away in the mountains for 12 years. The vampire Eugene finally breathed his last. Hugh. Eugene woke up in a dark room without a speck of light. Breathing heavily, he ran his hands over his entire body. Was it a dream? It could not have been. Half a year on the run. Just a moment ago, he had been captured and killed in a miserable fashion by young Dircht. The Templar captured him after persistently tracking him in his final month of escape. The pain and humiliation were still vivid in Eugene's memories as if it were a slave's brand. What is going on? Eugene mumbled blankly, then quickly looked around. Is this my house? He was currently in the cabin that he had built as a child, the same cabin he repaired repeatedly when it wore and broke down. Eugene hurriedly approached the door. Vampires possessed superior senses compared to humans, and as such, this level of darkness posed no problems for Eugene. He glanced at a calendar he personally produced. 12 years and 192 days. Knowing that there were 365 days in a year, he marked a blank space with an X mark before sunrise every morning. Thus, according to the signs on the calendar, almost half a year ago. Before everything happened. Did I really come back to the past? Eugene muttered dazedly in the darkness. I am not dead. Thick, hot tears started flowing from Eugene's eyes. He was overcome with complex and violent emotions as a vampire who was subjected to a violent death. Bloody tears continued flowing as he convinced himself of the miracle. After a while, Eugene wiped the tears that soaked his rough cheeks. Now was not the time to be relieved. 192 days right now. So 5 days from now. An event would completely transform his fate 5 days from now. Of course, at that time, he never imagined it would have such an effect on his life. It had simply been someone else's business. 5 days. 5 days. Eugene whispered softly, then bit his lips. I will never die like that again. If I really am back in the past, then by all means. Eugene made up his mind. He learned and realized many things during his half a year of escape. A vampire like himself could never live quietly. Even if he lived in hiding without consuming human blood, he would one day be caught and prosecuted as a miserable fugitive. He learned the hard way in his previous life. So he would not hide anymore. He would grow strong enough to fight confidently even if his identity was revealed. I will never regret anything again. Eugene's eyes glowed even redder in the dark. 5 days. It was short, but enough. Keek. Eugene carefully opened the door after making all the preparations. Heavy clouds colored the sky in the rainy season, so fortunately, he was not exposed to direct sunlight. But even this level of sunlight restricted the activities of vampires. Eugene once again confirmed his outfit. A dark mask that completely covered his face and a black leather robe that covered even his ankles. He was dressed in a thick, black shirt and pants inside the robe as well. Vampires could be active during the day as long as they weren't exposed to direct sunlight, and it was much easier for them on a cloudy day such as this. Although they could not express their unique strength, their physical abilities were still superior to that of ordinary humans. Eugene carefully left through the door with his coverings. He was in good shape. He felt so comfortable that it felt almost luxurious, considering the past when he was being tracked and chased by the enemies. Eugene locked the door tightly and inspected the cabin, though he knew no one would stumble upon it. Then he started moving towards the mountain. In the distant past, he consumed human blood on a single occasion when he was driven by instinct. Less than 2 days later, mercenaries were out to find him. Eugene had been small enough to hide in the sewers during the day to avoid their search. On the 5th day of hiding, knights armed with torches and terrifying weapons roamed the village at night. Their weapons emitted a divine power so immense that he felt weak just by looking at them. It wasn't until he ran into Jung Dircht that he learned their identities. They were Templars, natural enemies of vampires. He was stricken with fear and escaped. He crossed mountains and fields every night before eventually arriving in this place, and after that incident, he sustained himself by consuming the blood of the animals he hunted in the forest. For 12 long years. I will not do such stupid things anymore. The red glow of his eyes could be seen within the mask. Twice, he became prey and ran. Then, he realized. The law of the jungle: the strong would survive and the weak would die. It starts today. He would no longer be chased around as a monster but would become the predator himself. The first offering needed to be the one who provided him with unparalleled power in the past, even with just a few sips. Eugene crossed the mountain and entered the forest after a couple of hours. The forest had served as his hunting ground for a long time, and it felt like his front yard. The forest was dark and damp, and usually devoid of much sunlight. It provided a more comfortable state for Eugene than an open field. Anyone else would get lost and wander for several days in the dark, deep forest. But Eugene recognized the surroundings with his vampire senses and quickly crossed the forest. After another few hours, he finally arrived at the end of the forest. What spread out in front of him was a wetland surrounded by a dense forest. This was his destination, a dirty wetland littered with dangerous swamps. But he did not immediately enter the wetlands. He reached for a piece of leather hanging from his bag and perched it at an angle using a branch. After setting up a simple tent where 1 or 2 people could avoid the rain and the wind, Eugene placed his bag in the establishment before entering the forest with a dagger. Within 10 to 20 minutes, he returned with a large mouse and a few rabbits. He weaved the animals together with branches and tossed them inside the tent. Disregarding the frightened cries of the animals, he gazed at the wetlands. 2 or 3 more hours. The day was long in the current season, but the sun would completely set by then. and the night was the dominion of vampires. The dying sun dyed the looming dark clouds over the western sky with white, then finally disappeared completely. Pitter-patter. The drizzling rain began to pour in earnest after the sun went down. Eugene's 5 senses became more sensitive, and strength poured over his body as he listened to the sound of rain pouring over the makeshift tent. In his current state, he could easily deal with 2 or 3 mercenaries. But he knew this wasn't enough. Eugene took off his mask. His burning red eyes were normal, but the same could not be said for the rest of him. Only a few strands of hair remained on his head, and his haggard eyes, nose, and mouth made appear like a horrible, rotting corpse. Eugene stretched out his hand without hesitation. The big mouse and rabbits had been unmoving since a while ago. As his hand neared, they struggled helplessly. Eugene slit their throats and drank their blood in turn. Hot blood gushed down his esophagus. The heat provided by fresh blood quickly transformed into vitality and permeated Eugene's body as heat. His eyes glowed crimson, and his fangs and nails grew longer in an instant. Krrr. Eugene slowly walked towards the wetland. The rain showed no signs of abating. He moved along the waterfront with his body lowered, and his red gaze swept through the surface of the water, which was constantly disturbed by the rain and the wind. Eugene continued along the waterfront, sometimes kicking or throwing stones at the waters. His vision was several times better than usual, and he did not miss even the tiniest movement on the surface of the water. One leg was deliberately placed inside the water, which he was using to sense movement inside the water. Suddenly, he stopped. The surface of the water, which had been swept along the direction of the wind and the heavy rain, suddenly soared upwards like an explosion. Simultaneously, Eugene's body rose into the air. Qua! A monster appeared from the midst of the soaring water. Its body was covered in dark brown and green. Although its entire figure wasn't revealed, what could be seen was even larger than a bull. The monster opened its jaw with a glimmer in its eyes. Kawaap! Its gigantic jaw snapped in the air. Its giant, sharp teeth were reminiscent of dozens of stinging daggers. The creature missed Eugene by a tiny margin. Crack! After avoiding the creature's gaping jaw by jumping high into the air, Eugene plunged his dagger into the creature's eye while coming back down. Kawaia! The monster roared and struggled, which caused huge waves to break through the surface of the water. However, it was a vampire who was holding a dagger that penetrated its eye. Moreover, the sun had set completely. Although he avoided drinking human blood for a long time, he had been rejuvenated by the blood of the animals a short while ago. His strength far exceeded that of an adult man during the night. Krrrok! Eugene held on by wrapping his other arm around the creature's large head. Kawaik! The creature rose high into the air and turned its body. Eugene would have been crushed to pieces if the creature hit the ground at its current angle. However, he quickly realized the monster's intentions with a vampire's maximized senses, and Eugene changed his position like an acrobat with his arms wrapped around the creature. Simultaneously, he stabbed the monster's other eye with the dagger. Fuwak! As the monster's eyeball burst, its body collided with the water's surface. The vampire and the monster sank below surface. The short, fierce battle could no longer be found, and only the sound of rain hitting the water could be heard in the wetland. A little later. Kiwayug! Eugene's upper body burst through the surface of the water. Keg! Kureok! His eyes were still emitting a red glow, and he growled like a wild animal while struggling to climb out of the water. His left arm was already broken, but his right hand was holding onto the monster's large tail. Eugene slowly dragged the monster out of the water with all his might. He observed the monster's body like a hungry beast, then dug his dagger into the monster's eyeball without hesitation. As he dug out the eyeball, blood welled up in the empty socket of the monster, and the vicious vampire hurriedly gulped it down. For a long while, Eugene savored the blood of the monster in the cold rain. His body transformed during his long-awaited meal. Firstly, the various injuries he acquired during the battle were quickly recovered. Luscious hair quickly covered the various patches on his scalp, and his chapped, wrinkled skin regained its vitality, reflecting the pale glow of the moon in the cold rain. That was not the end. He had been smaller than a regular adult. As he relished in blood, his body grew in size, his limbs became much longer, and his body became toned and gained some muscle. Fwah! Eugene finally raised his face, sweeping back his long, black hair. The red blood staining his nose and mouth quickly washed away in the heavy rain. His transformed face was completely revealed. His red eyes shone like two flawless rubies, emitting a perfect harmony of madness and killing intent under his straight forehead. His straight nose and bright red lips struck a perfect balance with the slim lines of his face. The two protruding fangs betrayed his identity. Kiwag! The vampire roared in the pouring rain after regaining his true identity as a member of the tribe of the night.
Chapter 2. After savoring the monster's blood for quite a while, Eugene stopped himself after realizing that his body's transformation was over. The rain, which seemed to pour endlessly, had stopped as well. Under the dusk of the moonlight, Eugene stared down at the body of the monster. It was terribly crumpled. Although he used this very forest as his hunting ground for 10 long years, he did not know about the existence of the monster in the past. It was not difficult to find game as soon as he passed the mountain, and the water of the wetland was dirty, which made it unsuitable to drink. As such, he never had any reason to approach the wetlands. But when he was forcibly dragged away by the mercenaries, he discovered the presence of the monster. Of course, the mercenaries had not known about the monster. All those who discovered the monster in the past had been eaten, so no stories had ever spread. Originally, the wetland was smaller than this as well. The surface area of the water had increased due to the monsoon and the heavy rain, which caused a corresponding increase in the monster's radius of activity as well. That was the reason why the mercenaries had encountered the monster. The unknown monster with 6 legs had torn apart 7 mercenaries and escaped deep into the wetlands after losing an eye. At that time, Eugene spotted a severed toe of the monster and satisfied himself with a mouthful of blood amidst the mercenaries' confusion. A powerful burst of energy had circulated through Eugene's body back then. The blood of the monster provided strength incomparable to the power given to him by the blood of ordinary beasts. That was when he first came to his senses as a true vampire. Naturally, he couldn't realize his full strength because the amount of consumed blood was too little. Moreover, it had been before sunset. However, it had provided him with enough power to rip through the rope that tied his hands and feet. Afterward, he knocked down a few of the mercenaries and escaped. That was the beginning of his half a year of running. If he had not taken a sip of the monster's blood at the time, escape back then would have been impossible. But on the contrary, it also meant that he could gain much more power if he managed to completely consume the blood of the monster. Just like this. Eugene observed his body. He wasn't completely certain, but it felt as if he had grown about a palm taller. Toned muscles could be found all over his elongated limbs, and his skin, which had always been dirty, was clear and spotless. Accentuated blood vessels could be seen on his limbs, and he could clearly feel boundless energy wriggling all over his body. It was a powerful force that he never felt before. With his current strength, surely he could even deal with Jung Dircht, the Templar responsible for cutting off his head. No, I cannot become arrogant. Dircht was strong. Furthermore, he used silver-plated weapons containing divine power. Although ordinary weapons were somewhat ineffective against vampires, silver weapons containing divine power were different. Eugene clearly remembered the fiery pain he felt when he was cut by Dircht's weapon. I cannot get involved in a fight that I cannot win. Let's just focus on becoming stronger until I am certain of victory. He could live a repeat of his past life if he got caught up in emotions. Moreover, Jungdurcht was not the only Templar in the world. One at a time. Plan it out. Eugene calmed himself down. The tattoos are still here. He had more than 10 tattoos engraved on his body ever since he was a child. He had no idea who engraved it and when it had been engraved. Perhaps he had it since birth. Maybe I will find out about the tattoos one day as well. He removed his gaze from the strange characters and shapes that littered his body, then wiped his dagger clean before looking at the reflection. Vampires could not be seen in reflections. However, that was only limited to the vampire's original body, which meant that costumes and accessories could still be seen. Moreover, a vampire's reflection could be seen by themselves. I look like a human. Eugene had no standards for beauty. He spent most of his life alone, and he never had any reason to distinguish between different individuals based on their appearance. As such, he was satisfied that his face was properly decorated with eyes, nose, and a mouth just like any other human. Still, I will have to continue wearing a mask during the day. Eugene muttered softly, then moved to throw the monster's body back into the wetlands. No matter how deserted this place was, someone could approach the wetlands to acquire water, just as the mercenaries had done in the past. He could never leave behind evidence after hunting as a vampire. It was one of the things he learned during his previous life on the run. A glimmer appeared in Eugene's eyes as he grabbed the slimy tail of the monster. The monster's body was black and blue. However, there was a strange red light coming from a spot in the monster's back. It doesn't seem to be the original color of the leather. Eugene carefully examined the source of the red light. Is it inside? It seemed that the light was being emitted by something located inside the monster, rather than the hide having a red hue. Eugene stabbed his dagger into the monster's corpse. Originally, it would be difficult to pierce the monster's hide with a simple dagger. However, Eugene was able to rip it apart quite easily after having awakened as a member of the Knight's tribe. Moreover, the monster had been sucked dry of its life. This is... Eugene slightly raised his eyebrows upon identifying the source of the mysterious red light. He would never have known the identity of the object in his hand if he had only ever stayed in his cabin. However, Eugene learned many things about the world while on the run. He had a good guess as to the identity of the bright red ore in his hand. A mana stone? I knew this one was special among the roamers. Roamer. Roamer was a term given to monsters that wandered or resided in forests, mountains, streams, and other areas rather than mazes, dungeons, or ancient ruins. But unlike the monsters that resided in the evil lands, only special roamers possessed mana stones in their bodies. Mana stones were considered more precious than other precious metals or jewelry in the human world. However, mana stones were quite useless to ordinary humans. They were only useful for decorative purposes, and in some ways, they could adversely affect humans. However, after mana stones were purified by a priest or a wizard, they could restore people's strength, slow the process of aging, and even extend the human lifespan. As such, humans, especially nobles, always searched for mana stones with fire in their eyes. I thought all mana stones were supposed to be green. And it's this big. All the mana stones Eugene encountered in his past life had been green and smaller than pinky nails. However, what Eugene was holding now was red and thumb-sized. It seems rather special, but it's a pie in the sky for me right now anyway. There was no way for Eugene to purify the mana stone right now. It would be best for him to keep it and sell it to a human nobleman when he got the chance. Was what Eugene thought until the mysterious mana stone started talking to him. Eat it? It is for you. Eugene became wide-eyed as an intense emotion penetrated his mind. The mana stone had not actually talked to him. The moment he gazed at the mana stone, a voice had resonated in his head. Eugene slowly lifted the mana stone as if he were possessed by something. The redness of the mana stone resembled the color of blood and his eyes. "It is yours. Consume it." Eugene opened his mouth wide and swallowed the mana stone whole. He felt an even hotter and stronger energy flowing down with the stone, something even more intense than when he feasted on the monster's blood. It was quickly moving towards his right chest. Coop. Eugene instinctively grasped his right chest as a sharp pain struck him. He knelt on one knee. But when he touched his chest, a strange feeling was conveyed. It felt as if he was touching cold, hard metal, rather than his skin. Eugene took off his hand and looked down at his right chest. A black, hard shell the size of his palm lay over his skin. What is this? Huh. Suddenly, the shell extended its reach beyond his chest, covering his back, arms, and legs. The black skin was exactly the same as that of the wetland monster he just defeated. It quickly expanded and covered Eugene's entire body. "What the hell?" Eugene murmured with a ridiculous expression while stroking the thin, hard shell that perfectly covered his body. Even his hair felt like the skin of the monster, though it appeared normal. If anyone saw him, he would have been mistaken for wearing a one-piece scale, male armor. "Disappear. Begone!" Eugene shouted in desperation. To his surprise, the shell covering his body instantly melted into his skin. Eugene examined his body in disbelief. Then he spoke hesitantly, imagining that his body would become firm. "Become hard. Appear." The missing shell reappeared and quickly covered his body once more. After testing it out a few more times, Eugene realized that the newfound ability could be expressed by imagining it with strong concentration. He soon clenched his fist in uncontrollable excitement. This will be a great weapon. The monster's shell had been unscathed against the weapons of the mercenaries. It would surely be of great help in defending against attacks, though Eugene wasn't certain how it would fare against the silver-plated weapons of Templars. In addition, there was another important thing. It's black, so maybe it could block sunlight. He would have to wait until morning to test the theory. For the first time in his life, Eugene waited for sunrise with an eager heart as he dragged the monster's body towards the wetland. At that time, he saw a blue luminescence floating near the water in a place overrun by bushes. Is it a firefly? He disregarded the light and twisted his body to hurl the monster's body to the far side of the marsh. That's perfect. Dirty alligator bastard. The fish will feast tonight. Kook. A voice shouted in a frivolous voice. Eugene turned his gaze towards the voice like lightning, but there was nothing. All he could see was a blue firefly hovering over the bushes. You should have known your place, you insect. The voice appeared to be coming from the firefly. Moreover, the talking firefly continued to chatter while hovering above the bushes, completely disregarding Eugene's approach. A bastard who used to roll around in dung water got a big head, huh? A fitting end for trash that didn't know its place. Hey, you. My area's gotten so dirty because of you. It's so bad that it'll take me eons to return it to. The firefly continued talking excitedly. Then, its voice died down. The firefly, or rather, a small humanoid creature with two pairs of blue wings, met Eugene's eyes. Both of its hands were wrapped around its waist. Is he looking at me? No, that's impossible. How could a vampire bastard see a spirit? Of course not. Wait, didn't this bastard just swallow the crocodile's mana stone a little while ago? The self-proclaimed spirit continued talking to itself with furrowed brows, then looked up at Eugene. The spirit changed its attitude in an instant and put its hands together calmly before speaking. Am I visible to you by chance, O exalted member of the tribe of the night? Yes. Then did you happen to hear what my humble self was saying? All of it? Even how you called me a vampire bastard? The spirit flinched before bowing with a bright smile. Ah, I see. Your exalted self seems to be quite busy, so I'll leave you be. My humble self is a little busy, so I will take my leave. The spirit flapped its two pairs of wings and darted away like lightning. However, a vampire's reflexes could not be underestimated when the moonlight was coating the world. As soon as the spirit opened its small wings, Eugene stretched out his hand. The spirit was instantly caught in his violent grasp. Keek. My humble self is small, so it's not worth sucking my blood. I lived in dung water, so I probably taste like dung. Please let me live. Do you know the saying? That it's better to be alive than dead, even if you have to roll around in dung? Please. Keek. So you are telling me that you're the original owner of this wetland? But after that monster settled down 15 years ago, you became a slave. I prefer the term strategic partner. I wasn't exactly a slave. No prey would wander here if the water was completely dirted, so the water near the ground was recognized as my property. The spirit spoke submissively while rubbing its hands together, and Eugene responded in a cold voice. Having to do what you're told, that's called slavery. Yes, yes. If your exalted self says so, then that is what it is. Anyways, please accept my gratitude. Since that crocodile bastard is dead, the water should be purified. It is all thanks to you, sir. The spirit even kowtowed. Some might have taken it as an act of gratitude, but Eugene knew it was acting out of fear. The spirit continued stealing glances, even with its head touching Eugene's palm in a kowtow. Eugene could see that the spirit wanted him to leave this place as soon as possible. I guess it doesn't matter, since I won't be coming back to this forest again. I will let you go, so live your life. Ah! Your grace is as wide as I would have expected from someone as gorgeous as you. Your exalted self is truly a member of the Knight's tribe. Bless you. The spirit sprang up to its feet and groveled. Eugene dusted his hand and sent the spirit away as if he were chasing away a bug, then spoke after turning around. It must have been pretty painful for you to have been stuck with only that monster for over a decade. Anyways, take care. Yes. The spirit quickly flapped away in excitement even before Eugene finished speaking. Then, it paused before quickly returning to Eugene. Excuse me, sir. What do you want? Do you perhaps need a portable spring or anything of the sort? What? Eugene responded with a creased forehead. The spirit wanted to run away just a short while ago, so what was it playing at? Although it may not seem like it, I'm still a water spirit. Do you need clean water? I can make it for you right away. Like this. The spirit flew away and returned with a broadleaf before Eugene had a chance to answer. Then it leaned back before. Kaak. Hey K. Tui. 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 Large drops of water poured down from the spirit's mouth, and soon enough, a mouthful of water gathered in the center of the broadleaf after a moment. What do you think? I could make enough water to last you an entire day in just a short while. It's very clean and delicious. The spirit spoke proudly after spitting out a bunch of phlegm and spit. Eugene gazed at the spirit for a moment, then turned around. I don't need it. Ah. Yes, sir. Please wait. I can purify things as well. I can make any water drinkable in an instant. Ah, are you not satisfied with my speed? I can make water a lot faster if I excrete it rather than spitting. Scram. Sir. Oh, exalted member of the Knight's tribe. Chapter 3. No, I'm telling you. You can really trust me. I don't know about anything else, but when it comes to drinkable water, I can definitely provide you with it. Fine. However, do it where I can't see you. Yes. In the end, Eugene took along the water spirit named Mirian. Although the process of producing water was rather disgusting, it was an amazing ability to create drinkable water anywhere, anytime. However, that wasn't the only reason Eugene decided to bring Mirian. Are you sure that you're invisible to other people? Of course, none of the people eaten by that crocodile bastard ever saw me or heard my voice. At first, I tried warning them about the crocodile. Told them that a monster lived here. But since they couldn't see me nor hear my voice, all of them ended up as food. It appeared spirits were invisible to the human eye, or at least, none of the humans who visited the wetlands had ever seen or heard Mirian. A small, flying spirit. Above all, no one can see her except me. She will be useful in many ways. That was the most important reason Eugene chose to bring Mirian alone. And for the same reason, Myrina abandoned the wetland and decided to stick with Eugene. Phew. You don't know how much I've been through all these years. The only thing that could see me was that damned monster bastard. You can imagine how lonely and bored I was, right sir? A little. He was being truthful. Since living in hiding at the foot of the mountain, Eugene rarely came into contact with others. He couldn't count the days he spent without speaking a single word, and loneliness was the only friend to accompany Eugene for life. Oh, sir, I guess that must be your home, right? That's right. But why don't you stop calling me sir? Then what should I? Should I call you Mr. Eugene? Just call me by my name. You and I aren't humans anyways. Ah, then while we're at it, should I just drop the honorifics completely? Do as you please. Hee hee. Then let's do that. She really did adapt quickly. After discovering that Eugene was not as hard-boiled as she initially thought, Mirian flew circles around him rather excitedly. It's distracting. Stay still. Yes sir. I mean, yeah. Mirian calmly landed on Eugene's shoulder. After thoroughly observing the cabin to confirm that there had been no intruders in his absence, Eugene opened the door and entered. Oh. The house is nice. Mirian buzzed from place to place. Eugene wondered why she was so interested in a house with simple furniture that he built, but he quickly realized why. Just as he had never left the cabin, Mirian must have never left the wetland. Even if she wanted to sign a contract with someone, it would have been futile if they couldn't hear or see her. As such, the low-ranking spirit Mirian chose Eugene as her partner, even though spirits could only ever enter into a single contract during their lifetime. Phew. Release. Eugene laid down his bag and murmured. The black skin covering his upper body disappeared into the skin without a trace. Wow, it's amazing no matter how many times I see it. Is that what makes it possible for you to go around during the day? That's right. But it's not like I can go around naked. I need some clothes as well. Eugene confirmed his theory after sunrise. The wetland monster's skin was able to completely block the sunlight. In addition, it was possible to wool it on specific parts of the body. Relative to when Eugene wore black clothes and a robe, his physical ability improved twofold when he summoned the black armor. However, his eyes could not be covered by the monster's shell. He covered the weak spot by using a long-brimmed hat or a helmet. So what are you going to do now? For now, I need to see someone. Eugene planned to head to the town of Broadwin after sunset. It was the closest town to his cabin, and it was only a few days before an incident would occur in Broadwin, something he thought had nothing to do with himself. But he had no reason to sit on the sidelines just like then. Kia. The chief of Broadwin was leisurely enjoying a mug of beer after a meal. Father. What is it? What did you do this time? the 12-year-old shouted while rushing into the house, and the chief responded with a frown. "Be boar. There is a boar outside. The red-eyed monster must have been here." "What?" The chief jumped up from his seat and ran out of the house with his eldest son. In front of the door, surrounded by a low stone wall, a small boar lay dead. "Wow! It's a pig. Mom! It's a boar. Boys! Be quiet. Take it in with you." The children shouted excitedly, and the chief responded with a shout. After the kids took away the pig with joy and excitement, the chief tilted his head in puzzlement. It shouldn't be time yet. There was a red-eyed monster who lived at a hut located at the foot of a mountain far away from the town of Broadwin. When the monster first appeared around 10 years ago, everyone was afraid. But the monster rarely even approached the village, let alone harm anyone, and he even presented them with 1 or 2 hunted animals every couple of months, as if paying taxes. No one cared about him any longer. For more than a decade, the red-eyed monster and the townspeople of Broadwin maintained a strange relationship and mostly kept to themselves. However, the monster had brought a boar after sending a deer just 15 days ago. Did the hunt go well? This is strange. Just as he was about to turn around, the chief froze in his spot when he saw a pair of red eyes shining over the fence. He had never seen the monster since that day more than a decade ago, but he immediately recognized the monster to have gotten bigger compared to then. The monster gestured towards the chief in the darkness, as if calling him forward. What should I do?" The chief felt chills run down his back. He wanted nothing more than to immediately run into the house, but the monster had never once acted against them. Moreover, the monster shared his game for more than 10 years. Giving them a boar in just 15 days was different than usual. Does he have something to tell me? The chief was a clerk of a large business association in his youth. After being caught for embezzlement, he ran away and settled down in the town of Broadwin. As such, he was quick-witted and smart. He slowly walked to the stone wall with a loud gulp. It's been a long time. Do you have anything you want to say? May I come in for a moment?" Eugene, the red-eyed monster, asked. Vampires could only enter an establishment after being invited by the owner. "Well, come in for a second." With the chief's permission, Eugene took a step into the insides of the stone perimeter. "I'm actually here to show you that I've been cured." Eugene took off his mask after speaking. The chief became wide-eyed when Eugene's face was revealed in the pale moonlight. It was because the face of the monster was much more normal than he thought, or even more beautiful than anyone he had ever seen. "I let no one approach my house until now because of a disease I was inflicted with after being poisoned. It could have spread. But I wanted to let you know that I've been completely cured." Is that so?" The chief instinctively took on a polite tone. "But I won't be coming down to the town for a while anyway, since that will be more convenient for both of us. But if anything happens to the village or you need my help, you can call me anytime." Yes. I will surely do so. Then I will get going." Eugene slipped on his mask before walking away. The chief stared blankly at Eugene's back as the vampire seeped away into the darkness. After a while, he came to his senses and muttered in a low voice. "It can't be. A half-elf? Or maybe he was a descendant of an aristocrat?" His face was. The chief had seen a few elves during his time as a clerk, but he was convinced that the monster was much more mysterious and beautiful than even an elf. "So you're going to be hanging out with the people of that town now?" Miriam chattered while flapping in the air. She was convinced that it had been a good choice to stick with Eugene. "No." "Huh? Then why did you say such words?" "I have my reasons. Don't worry too much about that town. We will be out of here in a few days anyway." "Really? That's even better. I'm so excited." Miriam bounced with joy. Her goal was to see the world outside of the wetland. "I became acquainted with the chief. Next is. A group of mercenaries would visit the town of Broadwin in a few days. Their purpose was to take a boy who lived in the town to the castle of Lord Tywin, the lord of the region. He never imagined the incident would have anything to do with himself in the past. In fact, he had not even known about the incident at the time. The day the mercenaries come, all of the villagers will die. But since I met with the chief today, he should call me this time around. If so. Eugene's eyes sank coldly as he sprinted back to the cabin. 3 days passed. In the meantime, Eugene did many things. During the day, he either rested or practiced invoking black scales, the ability he gained from the wetland monster, more quickly and skillfully. At night, he wandered the area around Broadwin and focused on memorizing the terrain and the roads. He also hunted every night in preparation for leaving town. During his time running, Eugene learned that the leather of beasts traded at a fairly high price, though not as much as those of intermediate monsters. Since Eugene had no money, he would need to trade in animal skins to gain capital to live in the world. He consumed only a small portion of the animals he caught. He wasn't very hungry, perhaps because he devoured a huge amount of blood from the wetland monster. More importantly, the blood of animals did not taste very good anymore. He couldn't understand how he had sustained himself by drinking such a thing in the past. Eugene caught 2 black wolves and 4 deer in 3 days, then brought the meat to the chief's house after skinning the animals. All the while, he hoped the chief's interest in him would grow. 3 days later, at noon, Eugene left his cabin in advance and headed to the only road connecting Broadwin to the outside world. It was a quiet place with dozens of leafy trees. It's them. The sun had almost disappeared beyond the horizon. Eugene spotted a group of people appearing on a low hill from the top of a tree. 8. It was a typical group of mercenaries. As expected of low-class mercenaries, they were equipped with feeble armor. Only 3 of them were wearing leather armor, and the rest wore armor made of several layers of cloth. The 3 equipped in leather were armed with weapons such as short swords and maces, as well as circular shields, but the rest of them only carried wooden sticks and daggers. I will take care of the ones with short swords and shields. He learned during his past life that the equipment of the mercenaries was usually proportionate to their skills. Eugene would take care of the 3 most threatening mercenaries first, then deal with the rest of them. The mercenaries climbed down the curved hill and neared him. Only the sound of the occasional wind sweeping branches and leaves could be heard in the silence. The irregular sounds of the mercenaries soon added to the mix, and after a while, the 3 mercenaries were about to pass under the tree where Eugene hid. Eugene pounced silently like a sleek beast. He stabbed with the dagger in his right hand and clawed with the long, sharp nails on his left hand. Whoosh! Coop! Arg! The 2 mercenaries stumbled. One had been stabbed in the unprotected area of the neck, and the other's face had been torn apart by Eugene's nails. Now 6. The vampire hunted 2 mercenaries in an instant, then turned his red eyes to the rest of the group. Chapter 4. At first, he thought about disposing of the mercenaries in the village. There were 30 villagers, and to kill them all, there would be at least 5 or 6 mercenaries, or even more than 10. No matter how many times he thought about it, there was no possibility of killing all the mercenaries without ensuring no harm would be done to the villagers. So there was only one way. He would kill all of them in the middle of nowhere. What is it? The young mercenary was located right behind Eugene. He shouted in panic and pulled out his short sword. Eugene quickly turned around and dug his arms into the mercenary's body. Puck! The mercenary took on a shocked expression as the long nails pierced through his heart. At such a close distance, it would have been much better to put up his shield instead of choosing his sword. It seemed he was rather lacking in experience compared to the other two. Hayek! You fucking monster! The reaction of the remaining mercenaries was divided. Eugene's bare body was covered in black scales, and he was like a monster as he instantly slaughtered 3 mercenaries. Hayek! Sa save me! 3 of the remaining mercenaries fled without looking back. It was obvious from their poor equipment that they were inexperienced. However, the other 2 rushed in with expressions of fear and excitement. Quayak! Die! A wooden club embedded with sharp, metal pieces flew towards Eugene. Clang! Eugene avoided one strike and deflected the other with his arm. He pierced his dagger into the jaw of the surprised mercenary and flung him away. Boom! Yuwak! A mercenary collided with the body and rolled on the ground. A vampire's brute strength was not to be underestimated. Whoosh! Eugene's black nails clawed across the fallen mercenary's face and throat, and the man was dead in an instant. Krrrr! Eugene brushed off the blood and flesh on his claws, then turned around. Fucking hell! I can't see anything. I can't see. Quayak! A red-haired mercenary shouted in frenzy. He had lost his eyesight after having his face clawed at the very beginning. Thuck! Eugene knocked out the red-haired mercenary with a well-placed kick to the throat, then shot off towards the rest of the escaping mercenaries. Each stride allowed him to cross a distance equivalent to 5 or 6 steps. In an instant, Eugene narrowed the distance between himself and the mercenaries, then drew his claw horizontally while emitting a glow from his red eyes. Quayak! Arg! The mercenaries fell forward while letting out terrified screams, blood erupting from their backs. Hayek! Please, please! Sa save me! Let me live! The young mercenaries begged for their lives while blood soaked their backs and piss drenched their pants. But the vampire had been hunted by humans in his past life. Their pleading words meant nothing to him. Eugene slashed with his hands. The 3 bodies were completely split from top to bottom, then fell to the ground one by one. So, you were trying to feign the one named Ziegler as a bastard son? You were going to kill all of the villagers and even your young underlings to frame them as perpetrators. Ziegler was the name of the young mercenary whom Eugene took care of the 3rd. It was ridiculous. In the past, the villagers of Broadwyn had been slaughtered, which had, in turn, led to his identity being discovered and him being captured, which finally resulted in him being beheaded after a long chase. Everything was triggered by the greed of the mercenary named Timothy and his men. Please forgive me. I wanted to create a scene because I thought it was a good opportunity. If I knew that someone like you were in B. Broadwyn, I would never have done such a thing. Never. Please, spare my life. The red-haired mercenary, Timothy, who was now blind as well, begged for his life. If you tell me everything you know, I will spare your life. It was a boring line Timothy used countless times until now. Of course, he never actually spared anyone's life. But when the same line was used against him after he lost his eyes and became subjected to torture, he realized why all of them would say anything at all with tears and snot running down their faces. Did Lord Tywin make the request himself? And no. Lord Tywin fell ill last year due to a disease. I received the request from his 2 sons. Sons? Yes, yes. Camara Tywin and Bertel Tywin. The daughter have all been married off, so the 2 of them practically manage the land. Bertel Tywin. In the past, he had persistently chased after Eugene. Although they never faced each other in person, Bertel Tywin was a young knight who appeared quite strong. Please, please. I will live quietly from now on, so please spare my life. Timothy pitifully kowtowed towards the wrong direction while begging, and Eugene slowly approached him. He could not believe that he had been discovered and chased because of stupid, greedy humans like Timothy. A long black fingernail pierced Timothy's head. Timothy died without ever getting a chance to scream. Eugene searched Timothy's body. This is it. He did not know how to read, but he knew the coat of arms of the Lord's family. He had seen the same symbol on the surcoat worn by Bertelty Wynn in the past. After finding the letter of instructions, Eugene gathered the bodies of the dead mercenaries in one place. Afterward, he ran towards a mountain in the distance. Only the faint outlines of the mountain could be seen. The black wolves of the nearby areas were feared by even experienced mercenaries. They were big, strong, and agile, and they always ran without hesitation when faced with an enemy stronger than themselves. They were sneaky as well. But for an awakened vampire during the night, they were nothing more than just a couple of tricky, wild mutts. Eugene spent a couple of hours roaming the mountains with his five senses exerted to the max. As a result, he was able to find a group of 5 black wolves. 2 were fully grown, assumed to be the parents, and 3 appeared to be cubs. The wolves growled and showed their teeth even though they felt instinctive fear. Eugene used his dagger to catch the 2 mature wolves, then let the 3 remaining wolves escape. They were almost fully matured anyways, so they could live independently in the wilderness. He only needed 2 or 3 fully grown wolves anyways. With a large wolf on each of his shoulders, Eugene returned to the place where he killed the mercenaries. He then used the mercenaries' weapons to carve wounds all over the wolves' bodies, then damaged the corpses of the mercenaries with the claws and fangs of the wolves. After scattering the bodies of the humans and animals, Eugene took a step back and examined the scene of his creation. This would be a perfect crime. After returning to the cabin, Eugene headed to the village chief's house along with Miriam. The chief went wild upon hearing Eugene's story, that a group of mercenaries and black wolves had massacred each other not too far from the village. The village men, led by the chief, hurriedly followed Eugene with torches and farming tools in their hands. When they arrived at the place, which was located about an hour from the village entrance, their mouths became agape with shock. Bewig. It's real. This is crazy. They must have been killed by the wolves on their way to our village. Some regurgitated their supper while others boldly rummaged through the bodies of mercenaries and wolves. All of the men created a huge ruckus over the shocking event. So, you found them on your way back from hunting. I found them on my way back from inspecting my traps. I would not usually use this path, but I had heard rumors of black wolves appearing near these areas. I did spot 3 young wolves and chased them away. Eugene intentionally left alone the blood on his body. The chief and the village men believed it to have happened while he was driving away the wolves. So that's what happened. The chief felt very grateful towards Eugene. The man had given his proper greetings as soon as he recovered from his disease, and he even chased away black wolves that the people were afraid of. By the way, why were these mercenaries heading towards our village? Well, actually, I did search through their bodies just in case I could deliver their belongings back to their homes. Eugene took out a letter while speaking. Isn't this the seal of Lord Tywin? That's right. The chief saw the shield-shaped symbol decorated with a rose and a long blade. He hurriedly read the contents of the letter. He was the only one who could read in Broadwin. How could this be? What is it about, chief? The chief shouted while looking around at the crowd of men. These mercenaries. They were coming to get Felid. Felid? Why? Felid could be the bastard son of our lord, Sir Tywin. The men went wild once again at the chief's words. So, you will take Felid to Lord Tywin's castle? Yes. I think that would be the best option. There may be black wolves wandering around, and we could run into monsters and beasts on the way to the castle. I know how to fight. The reason Eugene wanted to take Lord Tywin's bastard son, Felid, to the castle, it was to gain proper identification. If he completed the commission on behalf of the dead mercenaries, the Lord would compensate him that much at the least. Well, that is true. The chief nodded with a grim expression. The chief traveled to a larger village with a traveling merchant 2 or 3 times a year. He knew the dangers of the wild better than anyone else. Even though monsters and predators rarely ventured outside of their territory, robbers and mercenaries were problems. Mercenaries could turn their backs at any time without hesitation, and robbers were, well, real robbers. Besides, what about the knights? They would cut down 2 or 3 commoners without blinking an eye. They did not care even the slightest bit for the country folk. Knights had treated even his past superiors carelessly with contempt. Excuse me. Pardon my words, but are you from a knight or noble family? The chief asked with utmost caution. He recalled Eugene's unusual beauty, and combined with the fact that he defeated several black wolves on his own, it was hard to believe he was an ordinary person. Eugene was taken aback by the unexpected question. However, he immediately nodded, thinking that this could serve as an opportunity. That is correct. I am Jan of the Eugene family. Although the only thing he remembered about himself was the name Eugene, the name Jan came to mind at that moment as well. He combined the 2 names to come up with a first name and a family name, just like the aristocrats. Please forgive me for being so rude until now. Sir Eugene. Wow. You're as good at lying as you are at killing people, aren't you? Well, I guess vampires are technically nobles known as the tribe of the night. Ignoring Miriam's words, Eugene shook his head. No, it is fine. Since I did not tell you, it was only natural. Thank you. Sir Eugene is so kind and merciful. Eugene felt a little bewildered by the chief's attitude, who was still acting so subservient even after getting up from the ground. Why is he acting like this? Eugene did not know that the chief had witnessed countless narcissistic, arrogant, evil knights and aristocrats in his youth. Anyways, I will do as Sir Eugene suggested. Since you are a knight, you will be safe even if you are alone. Moreover, Lord Tywin will surely trust the words of someone who is so dignified. Dignified? Me? Eugene was puzzled. Rather, he had been relieved that his skin was somewhat clear and his nose and mouth were in their proper places. However, the chief saw even great nobles during his youth, and his thoughts were different. Even the direct descendants of the Grand Duke of Cosa weren't this handsome. He must be a descendant of a family with a story and history. The chief rubbed his hands together while having such thoughts. Sir Eugene. You must be exhausted after all that you did today. Why don't you get some rest? Yes. Then I will leave first thing tomorrow with the Lord's son. Yes. Have a safe trip. Ah, and I will write a letter for Lord Tywin explaining today's matters and hand it to you tomorrow. You can pass it on to Lord Tywin. Thank you. He was somewhat puzzled that the chief accepted his sudden lie without having any doubts, but it did not matter as long as the man believed it. I'm glad the chief believed me, but this is not enough. Real aristocrats and knights are less likely to believe me. Then, should I learn how to write? Eugene heard that very few commoners knew how to read and write, just like the village chief. Even a majority of knights were illiterate as well. Since he was pretending to be a knight, his credibility would only increase if he learned to read and write. Oh, you ignorant vampire. You'll live at least 200 years unless you get a stake and a silver blade pierced through your heart, so learn to read and write. While you're at it, learn the ancient texts and the imperial language as well. You're right. Eugene nodded. He turned his gaze towards Miriam as a sudden thought struck him. So that means you know how to read and write? Nope. Spirits don't have to know about insignificant things such as writing and reading. I'm never going to write anything, and none of the other humans can see me anyways. So why should I? Miriam spoke confidently with her hands on her waist. Were all spirits so brazen? Anyhow, I should learn to read and write when I have the chance. He still had many things to achieve and far ways to go. But Eugene was confident all of it would act to his advantage as he overcame adversities in the wide world. Chapter 5. The next day. Although it did not matter greatly whether he slept or not, Eugene rested for a couple of hours just in case, before waking up early in the morning and packing up. As a vampire, Eugene did not need to eat and sleep like humans. As such, he only packed some clothes, weapons collected from the dead mercenaries, leather from hunted game, and a simple tent. However, once he gathered everything, it was quite a considerable bit of luggage. Perhaps he would look like a peddler from a distance. Will I ever have a chance to come back? Eugene became lost in thought as he looked at the cabin. He once thought he would spend the rest of his life in this small shack. He worked hard for half a year to erect the cabin. Now that he was about to leave it behind, it felt a little strange. This place isn't half bad, but a vampire should live in a decent castle. Have a few brides and slaves at your beck and call. Moreover, if you ever get your true name back, you can even summon familiars. They'll do your dirty work for you and beat up anyone who tries to come for you. Vampire Lord Eugene. The Count of Blood Eugene. That's what they'll start calling you once you get ahead. Miriam immediately transformed the gloomy atmosphere with her endless chatter. Eugene turned his cold gaze towards her. You know quite a lot despite having lived only in the wetlands. Where did you learn all that? I told you already. All spirits live in the spirit world before they get their own territory. Though it's just a simple place where we get together and have fun. Anyways, that's beside the point. Sometimes, seniors return to the spirit world from the material world, you know? They tell us a lot of things. Good advice that will be of immense benefit in the world. But you forgot most of it? I only remember things that I'm interested in. Not because you're an idiot. Nope. Miriam took on a grumpy expression before heading into a leather pocket. You don't even know anything. Tui. Tui. Kai. It was uncertain whether Miriam was creating water or throwing a tantrum. After closing the cap of the leather pouch, Eugene took one last glance at the cabin before departing. My name is Felid. Please look after me, Sir Eugene. A boy who looked to be about 15 or 16 bowed to Eugene. I'm Jan Eugene. I look forward to it. Felid had his brown hair tied back in a nonchalant manner, and he looked as the stories had it. Although he was still young, he would certainly grow to become a handsome young man. But Eugene only thought of Felid's appearance as balanced. And such a balanced appearance, by Eugene's standards, was good. He looks a bit similar to the knight named Bertel Tywin. Felid looked softer overall, but his stubborn lips bore a striking resemblance to the young knight of the Tywin family. It seemed to be a characteristic of the Tywin family. Here you are. The chief bowed after handing over a letter written to Lord Tywin. Then farewell, Sir Eugene. Eugene answered with a nod. The chief seemed convinced that Eugene would leave for good. Take care as well. Yes. Please take care of this brat, or rather, young Master Felid. I will let you know when I get there, Chief. Oh my. Please speak comfortably. And I hope you can, put in a good word to the Lord. Yes. This is my hometown after all. I will let him know for sure. Yes, yes. Thank you. The chief bowed repeatedly. He was immensely relieved that he chose to accept Felid and his mother into the town 8 years ago. Brother Felid. Goodbye. Send a mail. Don't forget your promise. You have to make me your aide once you become a knight. Eugene left Brodwyn alongside Felid while leaving behind the shouts of the village boys. It would be different this time around. He was no longer being chased. He took the first step towards the world with his own will. After nearly half a day of walking, Eugene finally came across a proper village. The village beyond the ridge was incomparably vast compared to Brodwyn. I think we are almost there. Yes. Felid followed Eugene diligently without ever falling behind or complaining, perhaps because he had become disciplined after farming. To be exact, he followed behind Eugene without speaking a single word unless he was spoken to. Wow, you are weird, but that guy's personality is really strange as well. Eugene ignored Miriam's words and continued to walk silently since Felid was right behind him. How could he ever be so silent? I thought he lived in that town all these years? It must have been years since he's ever left, right? Isn't he excited? Shut up and go make some water before I throw you away in a random pond somewhere. Yes. Did you just say something, Sir Eugene? He had tried his best to speak quietly, but it appeared Felid had overheard as well. No, it's nothing. I was only speaking to myself. That is the town of Brahms, right? Yes. I saw the sign earlier. That is indeed Brahms. What? Can you read? Yes. My late mother taught me. This was rather surprising. Even the majority of knights were illiterate, so how could a boy know how to read and write when he stumbled into Brodwyn and lived there ever since he was young? Was your mother a noble? No, I heard that someone she loved taught her when she was young. So she taught me and... Felid spoke with awkwardness. Eugene noticed that the one she loved was referring to Lord Tywin. I see. That's great anyway. You would have had to learn to read and write in the future anyway. Ah. Eugene turned his head towards Felid and spoke after suddenly thinking of something. Can you teach me how to read and write? What? Me? Teach Sir Eugene. That's right. I ran away when I was much younger than you after my family fell. So I never had a chance to learn, though I learned how to fight. Eugene was weaving lies without much effort now. But the innocent Felid believed his words and took on a sad expression. Ah, I see. But I heard that you can get ahead as a knight even if you don't know how to read and write. So are you willing to teach me or not? I will teach you. If you don't mind me teaching you, of course. Good. You can teach me after we set up camp later. Yes. Felid nodded vigorously. He felt as if he had grown a little bit closer to the quiet, blunt knight. This feels strange. Felid tilted his head curiously while staring at Eugene's back. Although it wasn't hot, it was still a warm day. But the knight was dressed in pitch-black clothes and even wore a mask. The red-eyed monster of the mountainside cabin was famous among the children of Brodwyn. The adults always warned the children to never approach the cabin. The monster always caught and brought game to the village once every 2 months or so. Everything surrounding the red-eyed monster, or rather, Knight Jan Eugene, was strange and mysterious. But now, Felid was on his way to Lord Tywin's castle by the knight's side. Felid could not believe it, that he could be the son of Lord Tywin and that he was traveling alongside Eugene. Should I make some small talk? No, they told me not to relax because all knights are bad-tempered. Felid shook his head inwardly as he recalled the words the chief spoke to him before Eugene arrived in the morning. It wasn't only the chief either. His late mother, who passed away last year, and the traveling merchant said similar things. Knights are almost always like predators. Never go against them and if you can, avoid making any eye contact with them. But wouldn't he let it slide and be more lenient because I might be Lord Tywin's son? And somehow, Sir Eugene seems very different from the knights I've heard about. Felid held his breath while quietly observing the knight. The tall knight was striding forward without rest even while carrying a large bag overlaid with several layers of thick leather. There is no way a knight like that would be a normal person. Let's not say unnecessary things and try to get close to him whenever I get the chance. Hey, he's looking at you weirdly. Where did I see that expression before? Ah, that's right. Those naked people who were busily sucking and biting each other in the pond had a similar expression. I don't know about others, but I was so grateful that they were killed by that crocodile bastard. Tap. I'm sorry. When Eugene suddenly stopped, Miriam scurried away into the leather pouch. But when nothing happened, Miriam stuck out her head and quietly stole glances at Eugene. Eugene's eyes shone with a light from inside the mask. But his gaze was headed towards the front rather than Miriam. What is it? What is it? Felid, stay back. Yes, Sir Eugene. Eugene took a step forward while placing his hand on the handle of a sword located inside his robe. It was the short sword that belonged to one of the dead mercenaries. It had been in the best condition out of all the armaments. What is your business? A group of people suddenly stood up from behind a large boulder. What else could it possibly be in a place like this? If you give me everything you have, I'll let you keep your life. The 5 robbers grinned and threateningly swung their blood-stained clubs and maces. Hey, what are you doing? Quick, so that we can. Shuak. Indeed, Eugene moved quickly. However, unfortunately for the robbers, he had moved much more quickly than what the robbers demanded. Eugene narrowed the distance at once and drew his short sword. Shhk. The leading robber's head was decapitated in an instant, and blood gushed from the stump. The body slowly fell backward, still holding a wooden club in the air. Then. Yuel. Shuak. 2 others were beheaded in an instant. One of them had been about to say something but died before he could finish his words. 3 people were dead in the blink of an eye. The silence was short. Huaya! Save me! The remaining 2 robbers panicked and began to run away in a frenzy. But Eugene was armed with black scales and dressed in thick, black clothes. Without the sanctions of sunlight, a vampire's physical abilities exceeded a normal human's by several times. Coop. The sword slashed 2 times, and the robbers collapsed with holes in their heads and chests. Eugene looked over the dead bodies after shaking the blood off the short sword. Then, he examined the blade. This was in the best condition out of all of them, but it's still quite pitiful. He knew it was too much to aim for a long sword like the one used by Jung Dircht, but he needed to find a better weapon. Eugene sheathed his sword and spoke. What's wrong? Eugene became puzzled and spoke to Felid, who was trembling with a pale blue face. But Felid did not respond. Or rather, he could not respond. After asking a single question, the knight just slaughtered 5 people in broad daylight. Felid's gaze contained both fear and relief. He was scared that Knight Eugene was in fact a being greater than a predator, but relieved from the fact that the incredible knight was currently his guardian. Chapter 6. Is this your first time seeing someone die? Ah. And no. Felid came to his senses and hurriedly responded while desperately holding back his urge to vomit. But what should we do with the bodies? Ah. Should we notify the people of Brahms? Or just throw it somewhere where it's not very visible? It's not like we have a shortage of scum like these in the world anyways. Someone will find them one day and take care of them for us. Having experienced and seen such a world for half a year, Eugene spoke calmly. Yes. Then I will clean it up quickly. Oh, wait. Felid forced himself to walk towards the bodies while holding back vomit. The corpses were still spewing fresh blood. Eugene interjected. They may have some useful objects on their bodies, so search them. Ah, yes. Although Eugene was quite distinct from the knights he heard about, Felid obeyed his words. I thought knights lived by honor and died by honor. But like Eugene, Felid only knew about knights from stories. He did not know yet that a knight's honor was only kept in places with watchful eyes. Whether you were a knight or a mercenary, looting was an essential part of a battle. Brahms was a fairly large village. The farmland and pastures were incomparably vast than those of Broadwyn, and dozens of proper buildings could be spotted all over the place. It was a stark contrast from Broadwyn, which only consisted of a dozen households huddled together. This is my first time here. He had stopped by large villages in other areas during his run in the past, but it was his first time inside the Tywin territory. Wow! 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 Unlike Eugene, who observed the surroundings with uninterested eyes, Mirian burst into continued exclamations while on top of Eugene's shoulder. Even Felid, who acted mature until now, seemed a little excited to visit such a big village after a long time. The group continued walking down the wide road for a while, then Eugene stopped in front of a place where skins of animals and monsters were piled up. Eugene walked up to a middle-aged man with a shaggy red beard and a round hat. I would like to sell some leather. Eugene was dressed in a dark mask and emitted a red glow from his eyes, and the merchant flinched upon seeing him. But as soon as he saw the pile of leather on Eugene's bag, the merchant's eyes glimmered. Is that what you are carrying? All of it is leather. That is right. The chief of Broadwyn told me that the red-bearded leather merchant was reliable. Oh, you mean Mr. Gev? The leather merchant's expression loosened as he mentioned the village chief's name. The chief was the only one from Broadwyn who traveled outside on a regular basis, and he had mentioned the leather merchant to Eugene. That was why Eugene had chosen to stop at this place first. That's right. Eugene laid down the skins of the animals he hunted and the 2 black wolves he killed before leaving the town of Broadwyn. Ho-oh! These are skinned rather well. Did you do it yourself? Not half bad. But the black wolf skins are quite damaged, so I can't give you too much for those. The other ones are in good condition. For all of them. The leather merchant stole a peek at Eugene, but he could not gauge Eugene's expression at all due to the mask. In addition, his red eyes were quite hard to read. They were quite burdensome. Tisk. Given the atmosphere, he must be quite an experienced hunter. Since he's coming here at the instructions of the chief of Broadwyn. The merchant finished his calculations in an instant, then spoke coolly. 27 kingdom silver coins and 50 bronze coins. You won't get a better deal anywhere else. Let's do that. Eugene nodded, knowing that 5 bronze coins could buy a meal with a mug of beer. Ha ha. You hide your face, but you have a straightforward personality. Here it is. Soon, dozens of coins the size of a thumbnail and silver coins, which were twice as large, entered Eugene's pouch. Eugene was satisfied with the fact that he no longer had to avoid silver coins thanks to black scales. This is our first trade, but you seem to know the business. Stop by often. I can proudly say that I'm the best when it comes to leather around here. Do you have leather robes or anything similar? Something that completely blocks the sunlight, something preferably black. A robe? Ah, well. The merchant saw Eugene's robe, which was essentially pieces of untanned leathers glued together. He quickly searched through his stockpile of goods before pulling something out. You're lucky. I recently came across a very precious object. It's made of cowhide and lycanthrope leather. It's waterproof and completely blocks the sunlight. It is quite expensive, but it provides more protection than a decent set of leather armor, so I would say it is worth the money. The robe took the form of a long cape. It even had several ornamental straps and fur decorations. Eugene felt rather sorry to even compare his current robe to it. It was a piece of garment that was a result of exquisite craftsmanship. I will take it. Haha. You truly are forthright. Good. I thought I would never sell it in this town anyway, so I was going to send it over to Marin. I like your personality, so I'll just take 8 silver coins. Here you are. It was enough money to buy dozens of ordinary clothes, but Eugene presented the silver coins without hesitation. Come again. Leaving behind the leather merchant, Eugene headed towards a sign engraved with a sword and a shield. What are you doing? Let's go. Ah, yes. Felid scurried along at Eugene's words. He had been dazedly staring at Eugene's back. That is amazing. Even the chief couldn't buy and sell this easily. Felid's respect for Eugene deepened after witnessing the trade just a moment ago. The chief had always struggled with the merchant, while Eugene worked out a deal all too easily. After spending around an hour purchasing goods in the market, Eugene left Brahms. He had a new robe, strong boots and gloves made of cowhide, as well as a helmet that completely covered his face. His appearance was completely different from before. Anyone would assume him to be either an experienced mercenary or a free knight wandering the world. Not too shabby, Of course, vampires are all about silk clothes, but I guess this isn't bad either. Eugene didn't know what silk was, but it was clearly a very expensive material, seeing that Miriam was always trying to satisfy her greed through Eugene. For Eugene, however, the best clothes were ones that were durable and properly blocked the sunlight. Since dwarven-made weapons are only available in the cities, I'll hold on to this for the time being. The weapons of the mercenaries only netted him 2 silver coins. Most of them had been cheap goods. However, he was able to obtain 2 silver coins since he had so many of them, and adding on an extra silver coin, he purchased a decent short sword. The short sword, also known as an arming sword, was originally paired with a shield. It was a symbolic weapon of the mercenaries. If I want to look like a knight, it would be best to get a long sword, but it costs too much money and I'm not well versed in swordsmanship. Anyways, I should purchase a horse first when I get some more money. Any knight would have their own horse. However, even the cheapest of steeds cost over 50 silver coins, while he only earned 29 silver coins from selling all the animal leather and the mercenaries' weapons. Moreover, they weren't war horses for knights, but plain, regular horses. Sir Eugene, are you not going to hire any mercenaries? Felid did not doubt Eugene's skills, but he heard stories that knights usually hired mercenaries to assist them in combat or to perform chores. We aren't too uncomfortable right now and I don't have enough money. It would be ridiculous to spend a silver coin to employ 2 idiots. Ah, I see. Felid bowed his head and shut his mouth. He had been about to say that Lord Tywin would surely compensate that amount if he was officially recognized as the Lord's illegitimate child. Let's go. Yes. Eugene and Felid resumed their journey towards Lord Tywin's castle. Is it usually this easy to learn to write and read? Well. You're just extraordinary, Sir Eugene. The bonfire crackled while emitting a warm haze. The ground next to the fire was full of scribbles and erased marks. I am. Yes. It took me 2 days to memorize and write all the letters. Besides, the grammar and whatnot. It took me more than 15 days to figure it out somewhat. It's amazing that Sir Eugene finished it all in a couple of hours. Really? Eugene felt satisfied. Although he had never been certain, he always had a hunch that he was quite smart. When he first ran away in his past life, he always looked for deserted places in the beginning. But after 2 or 3 months, he realized it was better to hide in crowded places. As such, He overcame several crises while staying mixed in with humans using his judgment and improvising. At least, until the Templars showed up. He had no information available to him regarding the Holy Knights. Anyways, Eugene thought he would have lasted less than a month, let alone half a year, if he had a bad brain. But seeing as he learned reading and writing so quickly, he realized he wasn't just half bad, but pretty smart. Tell him to try it one more time. Just once more. Ah, I swear I can memorize it as well if I can see it one more time. Come on. Just once more. While Eugene mastered basic grammar as well in just a couple of hours, Miriam whined because she could not even memorize all the letters. You're not cheating, are you? I can't even memorize all the letters, but you're telling me you can already write them? I don't believe it. I don't believe you. Oh, yeah. After remembering something, Eugene searched for and took out a piece of parchment. It was the letter written by the village chief of Broadwin to Lord Tywin. Eugene read the letter out aloud while Phelid looked on with curious eyes. My lord Sir Tywin. First of all, I apologize for having to convey this news. It is due to my inattentiveness and inability that this has happened. In fact. Phelid nodded while listening to Eugene's voice and checking the chief's letter with his own eyes. As such, I requested a knight named Jan Eugene to escort Master Phelid. I have never heard of the Eugene family before, but given their unusual appearance and skills, they seem to be a descendant of a fallen knight or a noble family. Of course, I wanted to hire mercenaries to do the job, but please understand the situation of our poor village. The loyal servant of our gracious Lord Tywin, Gev. You're great. It's perfect. Phelid was overjoyed. Really? Yes. I think it was even better because you have such a nice voice, Sir Eugene. By the way, it is a neat letter. The chief wrote very well. Is that so? Eugene had no way of knowing whether it was well written or not, as he had just learned to write not too long ago. He just accepted Phelid's words for what they were. That's that. Eugene glanced at Miriam, who was floating in front of him with a shocked expression. Ah! Miriam stood unmoving in the air absent-mindedly, then suddenly shook her wings. I knew all vampires were con artists. You almost had me fooled there for a second. Wow! You made up a story like that in such a short time. I'm sure you'll get ahead, Eugene. The spirit made a fuss while pretending to be calm. She even forced a smile on her face. The corners of Eugene's mouth lifted in a smile. Ha! What's with that rotten smile? What's with that funny look you're giving me? Why are you looking like that? Am I funny? Do you find this amusing? Huh. Keek. Eugene snatched Miriam out of the air like a flying bug, then placed her inside the leather pouch. Oh, was there a mosquito? How stupid. To think they would choose to hang around Sir Eugene. You'll always find moronic creatures wherever you go. Keek. Key. Eugene closed the pocket and cut off the defeated cries of the spirit, then raised his head. What's wrong? I think someone is coming. Eugene sensed nearing presence. His 5 senses were much more sensitive during the night than during the day. The sound of rolling wheels. A total of 6 pairs of footsteps. The smell of leather and oil. Were they mercenaries? After a while, the group that alerted Eugene's senses arrived. 2 carts, and 6 men, who seemed to be mercenaries. There were others. Hello there, friend. A big man raised his hand. He was at the forefront of the group. His tight leather armor had multiple pouches, and he was armed with a short sword and a circular shield. He's wearing a chainmail inside as well. He's not ordinary. After leaving the town of Broadwin, Eugene had encountered the first real mercenary.